All right, I will say good morning. Let us begin a beautiful daf ahead of us today. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors, to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Teves. The members of the Daf Yomi Shiur for dedicating Shurim and Drashos this month in memory of Mr. Milton Marder, Mordechai Dovid ben Rephael HaKohen, Zichron Livracha. To thank the Elbaum Mishpacha for dedicating Shurim and Drashos this month in memory of Yaakov Kopel, Ben R Avraham Menachem, Zichron Livracha, and to thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, David Gerhardt, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of his brother, Yosef Mordechai ben Yishaya Leib, Zichron Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshama will have an aliyah, and the families a neshama. With that, let us begin a beautiful daf ahead of us today. So today's daf is page Dalet 84. We are actually going to pick up in Meretz Hashem on page Gimel Amud Beis. Let's pick up 2, 4, 6, 8 lines up from the bottom. So we'll say, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. So if you remember again, we had a Mishnah, beautiful Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Konam she'eni nana lebrios. A woman made a neder, right? So Rachel's married to Ruvain, and Rachel makes a neder. What's her neder? That I'm not going to get benefit from any brios, any people. So what's the halacha? So the Mishnah said, Eno yochel lahafer. Ultimately, again, the husband is unable to annul the neder. So we'll say there are essentially 3 statements over here. Statement number 1 is the neder that she's making. I make a konam right neder that I'm not going to get hana from anyone. That's part 1. Part 2 is her husband is not permitted to annul this neder. Okay, and what's part 3? But she is permitted to go ahead and partake of leket, shichacha, and peah. So those are the 3 parts. Those are the 3 parts over here of our statement. So now what we're going to see is an interesting Mishnah about, so the Gemara pointed out, what's the problem? The problem is, it sounds like over here that the reason that the husband can't annul the neder is why? Because he's not included in it. He's not included in it, right? Because again, if he was included in it, he should be able to annul it, because then it would be either dvarm shebeino lebeino, so he should be able to annul it. The fact that he can't annul it seems to indicate that the husband, bless you, is not included bichlal brios. The problem is, then when the 3rd part of the Mishnah says, but she can eat from leket, shicha, and peah, what does that infer? She can eat from leket, shicha, and peah. Why? Because she can't eat of her husband's. Which sounds like that her husband then is bichlal brios. So now we're going to have 3 attempts to understand the Mishnah. Here we go. Amr Ula. The olam, the back changes this to the olam bal lav bichlal briosu v'hari katani. So also listen to this. So Ula says, in reality, the husband is not included in brios. He's not included in this statement, in the neder. So the Gemara says, furthermore, so that's why halacha l'maisa, the Mishnah says, excuse me. Therefore, again, that's why the Mishnah says the husband does not have the ability to annul the neder. Remember, husband can only annul the neder when Rabbi was saying when, if either A, inui nefesh, or dvarim shebeino lebeina. This is not an inui nefesh situation, right? And if he's not included in brios, it's not dvarim shebeino lebeina. According to Ula, at least. Therefore, again, so va'od in yochel lahafer mipnei sheichol lehanos b'leket shicha and peah. So it's according to Ula, the Mishnah is coming to add in, and furthermore, the other reason why he can't annul it is because it's not like she's without support. Where could she literally glean support from? Leket, shichacha, and peah. So therefore, Ula's approach is, husband is not included in brios, but even it almost sounds like what Ula is saying is, even if he was included in brios, he still couldn't go ahead and annul it. Why? Because she has alternate sources of support. Good. That's Ula. Rava says, very situation. Rava Amar, the olam bal bichlal briosu. Let's say Rava argues. Rava says, in reality, a husband is included in brios. So listen to this. Umatam kamar, and what the Mishnah is saying is a reasoning. Matam in yochel lahafer. So why is it ultimately again that the husband doesn't have the ability to annul the neder? So it's interesting. So according to Rava, the logic is like this. It's almost like a cause and effect. A husband is included in brios. He is included in brios. So if he's included in brios, then about say ultimately again, he should have the ability to annul the neder. So why doesn't he have the ability to annul the neder? Because she has the ability to partake ultimately of leket, shechacha, and peah. Now, what does this mean? Take a look at the Ran for just a moment. So I will say the Ran is 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines up from the bottom. So writes the Ran, Rava Amar the Olam Bal B'Chlal Briosu, Umatam Kamar Matam in Yachal Hafer. Why doesn't the husband have the ability to annul the neder? Mipnei Shechola Lehanos Meleket Shechan Peah. Svirli the Rava, the Afa Gav Delo Katani, Mipnei Shechol Lehanos Memela Mashma Dematam Kamar. So we'll say this in of itself, the Ran goes on to really question the Shita, but we're not going to get into this too much. So we'll say, so you see this on the Machlokes. So Rav is saying husband is included in brios. If husband is included in brios, so why doesn't he have the ability to annul the neder? And the answer is she has alternate means of support, i.e., leket, shechacha, and peah. Comes on Rav Nachman, last of Rav Nachman Amar, the olam bal lav bichlal briosu. Rav Nachman says in reality the husband is not included in brios. So we'll say, so Rav Nachman and Ula are of the same opinion, namely that when Rachel makes neder, konam she'eni nena lebrios, husband is not included in that neder. So Rav Nachman the olam bal lav bichlal brios who v'hachikatani. Well, this is what it means to say niskarsha yichola lehanos beleket shechan peah. Now, it's actually very interesting. So Rav Nachman says, here's what the Mishnah is teaching me. In reality, husband is not bechlal brios, right? He's not included in brios. Now this makes sense. That also tells me what? That's why the husband can't annul the neder. Why can't he annul the neder? Why not? Nothing to do with him. It's not inui nefesh, and it's also not dvarim shebeino lebeino. So we'll say, now watch this. Now here is what is interesting. What happens if Rachel and Reuven divorce? What happens if Rachel and Reuven divorce? We'll say, who suddenly does become included in brios? Husband. Right? Because now he's no longer the husband. He is included in brios. But what's interesting is then, even then, now that husband is included in brios, she's still okay. Why is she still okay? Because she has leket, shechacha, and peah. So read that again. Rav Nachman, the olam ba lab b'chal briosu. V'achikatan means to say, niskarsha, if ultimately again she becomes divorced, niskarsha yichola lehanos beleket shecha and peah. Let's take a look at the last Ran on the daf. The Ran says, Rav Nachman Amar, the olam ba lab b'chal briosu. So I say this is why the husband doesn't have the ability to annul this neder. She'im lo haisi yichola lehanos mimenu af al pi shechol lehanos beleket shecha and peah inui nefesh havi umefer. So I'll say, now what Rav Nachman adds in is like this. Rav Nachman adds in, let's be clear. See, I will say, this is where Rav Nachman argues on Ula. See, Ula's logic is like this. Ula says, husband is not bichlal brios, but then Ula says, even if he was, husband still couldn't annul the neder. Why? Because she has support from leket shecha and peah. Comes on Rav Nachman disagrees with that. He says, well, he agrees and disagrees. I agree. Husband is not included bichlal brios. If husband was included in brios, then what? He would be able to annul it. Why? Because the inability of a wife to gain benefit from her husband is inui nefesh. So what does the leket shecha and peah come to teach me? V'achikatani. Nisgarsha. So according to Rav Nachman, the leket shecha and peah piece is coming to teach something different. In the event that they get divorced, yichola lehanos beleket shechacha upeah. I will say in that case, if they get divorced, she has the ability to write benefit from leket shecha and peah. The lesbu tovas hana daziva ksiv bahu v'kamash molam v'chishiniskarsha yachzer habal lios bichlal iser brios ve'ema lehanos ela beleket shecha and peah. So we'll say this is incredible. According to Rav Nachman, here's the chiddush. Even though at the time she makes the neder, her husband is not included in the neder because bal lav bichlal brios. But should they get divorced, interestingly enough, husband becomes part of the category, or ex-husband becomes part of the category of brios. Therefore, she cannot benefit from him. But have no fear. What can she benefit from? Leket, shechacha, and peah. And this goes back to yesterday's daf. Why can she benefit from leket, shechacha, and peah? Because leket, shechacha, and peah are considered to be hefker. And therefore, she's not acquiring that from someone. She's acquiring that from hefker. And therefore, ultimately, it would be permitted. Good. So we'll say these are the three different interpretations of the Mishnah. So it says the Gemara, Eisvei, Rava Rav Nachman. So Rava raised the Kasha Nachman. Now both say, now here's what's interesting. See, pretty much if you want to frame this, you've got Ula and Rav Nachman on one side, because both of them hold Baal La Bichlal Brios, and Rava on the other side who holds Baal Bichlal Brios. So now Eisvei, top of Pei Dalet, Eisvei Rav Nachman. So now Rava raised the Kasha to Rav Nachman. What was Rava's Kasha? Here we go. Ubal lav bichlal briosu. Is that true that the husband is not included in brios? Is that true? V'hatanan, both said, listen to the following case. V'hatanan, netula ani min haYehudim. So also we're going to see this case in just a couple of days from now. Right? A woman says to her husband, I am removed from the Jewish people. That's what it is. Netula ani min haYehudim. I'm removed from Klal Yisrael. So what's the halacha? Now, both say. Now, remember, we actually referenced this case, and remember again, what does the case refer to? The way we understand it is a prohibition on relations. Right? I'm not permitted to have relations with any Jew. So in the Tulani Minehu, then what's the halacha? Yafer Chelko, the husband should annul his part, so to speak, of that neder. Utehei Mishamashto, and ultimately, again, he's permitted to be with his wife. So the Gemara says, however, her neder is in effect. Her neder is in effect for who? For the rest of Klal Yisrael. So fine. Shabbos says, now Rav is asking Rav Nachman. Watch this. V'i amrit bal la bichlal briosu. Rav Nachman, if you're correct, and husband in general is not included in any general statement of people, then ultimately again, har nidre inui nefeshein v'yafer la. Then again, I will say, we're going to see how to read this in just a moment. Right? So literally the way it reads is, this is a neder of inui nefesh, and therefore ultimately again, he should be able to annul it. Now take a look at the Ran for just a moment. So we're going to see the Ran and the Rush. So we'll say the Ran is 2, 4, 6, about 7 lines in the wide lines of the Rush, the bottom wide lines. Now watch this. V'i amrit bal lab bichlal briosu. Lama lo hafara daha'ihu lo havi bichlal iser. Now I will say, the way the Ran frames the question, which doesn't seem to work with the words of the Gemara, the way the Ran frames the question is, so we'll say, let's take a step back. Right? Rava asks Kasha Rav Nachman. Then let's review their respective shitos. Rava holds that what? Rava holds Baal Bichlal Brios. Right? That whenever she makes a general statement about people, husband is included in that. Rav Nachman holds Bal Lav Bichlal Brios. Rav is asking a kasha on Rav Nachman. Here's the case. Woman makes a neder. Netula ani mina Yehudim. I can't have relations with any Jews. What does the Gemara, what does the Mishnah say? What should the husband do? He should annul his part of the neder, and the rest of the neder remains in effect. So now, according to the Ran, Rav's kasha is like this. Rav Nachman, if you are right, that a husband is not included bichlal brios, then what? I will say, then what? There should be no hafara necessary in this case, because netula ani mina Yehudim does not include the husband. That's what the Ran says. V'yamrit bal la bichlal brios. So look at the Ran again. Lama li hafara. Why does the husband have to annul anything? To ha'ihu lo havi bichlal iser. The husband is not included in the neder. So I will say the Rush has a little bit of a different version of this. But again, if you look at the Rush quickly, it's the same idea. The Rush and the Rush says the bottom right hand column. The Tulani Yehudim. So I will say, he says Demisha eno bichlal brios gam eno bichlal Yehudim. Ve'im came chelko amay tzarich lahafer v'hari lo asra atzmo alav. So again, the Rush essentially says the same idea over here, which is halacha lamaisa. What Rav is asking on Rav Nachman is, Rav Nachman, if you're correct that a husband is not included bichlal brios or bichlal Yehudim, then why does he have to annul his portion at all? To which the Gemara says, Shiny hacha, to which Rav Nachman will respond, this case is different. I will say, why is this case different? Because halacha lamaisa, shani hacha demuchacha milsa dal hetera ka'asra nafsha. So I will say, what Rav Nachman is going to say specifically in the case of netula ani min haYehudim. I will say, see, we're interpreting netula ani min haYehudim to mean what? I am not permitted to have relations with anyone. Now, Rav Nachman says, when a person makes a neder, what are they doing? They're assering something upon themselves that wasn't assur beforehand. Now remember again, so let's play this out. Rachel's married to Reuven, right? She makes a neder. I make a neder not to, it's assur for me to have relations with any Jew. Now, she's married. A minor detail of marriage is she already can't have relations with any other Jew. There's actually only one Jew with whom she is permitted to have relations, and who is that? Her husband. So Rav Nachman will say if she's making this neder, obviously why is she making the neder? Why is she making the neder? To prohibit something which was previously permitted. So if that's the case, then halacha l'maisa, again Rav Nachman will say, of course it has to include the husband. Because again, I will say that's just in her kavana of the neder making. Take a look at the Ran. So I will say again, about 8 lines into the Y lines of the Ran, shiny hacha, the mucha milsa de TORAH ka'asra nafsha, the olam ba'amala b'chlal briosu. Rav Nachman will say, no, come on. In general, a husband is not included b'chlal brios. Aval hacha kisho seres alea hanos tashmish va'omeres netula ani min haYehudim. Al karchach dait dehushi bal bichlal isura da'atera ka'asra nafsha debi isura lama li lamesar kvar asura ve'omedes. She doesn't need to take a neder prohibiting herself upon having relations with other Jews because she is already prohibited. She's a married woman. V'chevan de lesla teira ela b'tashmish baila. Al karachach ikar nidra hu le'esar hanas tashmisho hilchach hacha vada karachach ba b'chlal briosu. Shabbos said it's interesting. So even Rav Nachman, who normally holds bal lav b'chlal brios, will agree that in this case bal b'chlal brios. Why? Because otherwise, what is the impact of her neder? So therefore, again, so Rav Nachman kind of answers up this case to Rava and says that halacha l'maisa, this is not a stira to me. So good. So we'll say that closes out this discussion. So again, let's just analyze what it is that we are left with, and what we are left with is halacha l'maisa, a 3-way machlok is how to understand the Mishnah, but a more profound machlok is in terms. Well, it's not the same machlok is the fundamental machlok is in terms of how to go ahead and understand is bal bichlal brios, bal lav bichlal brios. So you have again Ula and Rav Nachman saying bal lav bichlal brios, Rav is saying bal bichlal brios, but again pointing out that even according to Rav Nachman, you could have a case, for example, Netula ani min haYehudim, where even he would agree that bal bichlal brios in that particular case. So I will say, I'll just point out, how do we paskin in this situation? We're not finished with the sugya, I just want to read to you this Rambam. So the Rambam says in Parak Yud Beis Halacha Ches in Hilchos Nedarim, a very interesting halacha. He writes, V'chein im nadra shelo lichanos lebrios. Right? If a woman makes a neder not to get hana from people, afapi she'ein habal bichlal. So we'll say, the Rambam paskins like Rav Nachman. Very important. Now I'll say, bal lav bichlal brios. That is how the Rambam is pasking Abbas, and this is incredibly important. So now, if we pause here for just a moment, if we accept the premise of bal lav bichlal brios, then Abbas say, when a woman makes a neder, not to get hana from the brios, from people, what does the husband have to do with that neder? What can he do with that neder? What can he do? Bepashtus nothing. Right? Bepashtus nothing. Why? Because if he's not included in the neder, then what? It's not dvarim shebeino lebeina, right? And it's not what? It's not the inui nefesh. And I will say, so again, bepashtus, it sounds like, again, Ram is passing like Rav Nachman, and therefore, Allah Chalamaysa, there is nothing for the husband to do in such a neder. But yet the Rambam does something amazing. Listen to this. Afapi she'ein habal bichlal, so even though a husband is not included, bichlal brios, listen, get ready for this. Yesh lo lahafer mishum dvarim shebeino lebeina. Wow. So I will say the Rambam paskins that this becomes a neder that governs dvarim shebeino lebeina. Now, 1 second. How does it become a neder of dvarim shebeino lebeina? Listen to this. Get ready. Shelo yezokuk laha'achila mishelo bilvad. Rabbi say, listen to this. This is fascinating. The Rambam says when she makes this neder not to get hana from anyone. So Rabbi, listen to this. That means sole support falls upon who? her husband. So we'll say, I just understand what this means. Reuben's married to Rachel. Rachel makes this neder, konam shenin neder lebrios. I can't get hana from anyone else in this world. So we'll say now, someone wants to give Rachel a gift, right? What's the halacha? Wants to give Rachel a gift. What's the halacha? She can't accept. Her parents want to help them out in buying a house. What's the halacha? Can't accept. So suddenly again the Rambam says, this becomes dvarim shebeino lebeino. Why? Because suddenly now she can't accept any form of help from anyone else, which by definition means that the full responsibility of doing anything for rests solely upon the husband. So we'll say this is incredible. So therefore I just want to point out what's happening over here. So the Rambam paskins like Rav Nachman, namely, that ultimately again, this type of neder, konam sheni nene lebrios, bal is not included in brios. But whereas in our discussion in the Gemara, the way it worked is, well, if you're not included in brios, then you have no power of hafara, because it's not inui nefesh, and it's not dvarim shebeino lebeina. The Rambam says, yes, it is dvarim shebeino lebeina, because halacha l'maisa now complete support rests upon the husband, and the inability for her to receive any form of help, financial help from anyone else, is usher. The Rambam says, well, that becomes dvarim shebeino lebeina. And he goes on and he says, "V'cheinim asar sufan." So he goes on to Tulam and Nehidil, so we'll leave that for a different time. So halacha l'maisa, the Rambam is passing like Rav Nachman, namely that husband is not bichlal brios, but yet the Rambam paskins that this is an annullable neder. Why? Because it is dvarim shebeino lebeina. Incredible. Let's go back there. Says the Gemara, Yechola leharos beleket shichan peah. So remember again, the Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, she is allowed to partake of leket shichan peah. Now, what was the chiddush of the Mishnah? Chiddush of the Mishnah was that even though she made a neder not to get benefit from anyone, halacha l'maisa leket shichan peah is not considered to be getting hana from someone. Rather, again, when you enjoy leket shichan peah, who is that coming from? Where is that coming from? Hefker. So therefore, because you're not getting that from a person, that is not called getting benefits from anyone. So incredible. So says the Gemara. So velo katani b'maiser ani. Now this was interesting. They both say, what can't she benefit? Or I should say, the Mishnah points out, the Gemara points out, the Mishnah does not include maiser ani. So it says she can get benefit from laket, shechicha, and peah, but it doesn't say that she can get benefit from maiser ani, special tithe to the poor. Okay, so the Gemara says, Vatanya, we learned, Vatanya b'braisa, over maiser ani. Yet Rav say we learned in the braisa. Now again, the Misiras Hashas writes, when we say braisa over here, this is a Tosefta. We learned in the Tosefta that she could even get benefit from maiser ani. From Maiser Ani. She says, so what's going on over here? Can she get benefit from Maiser Ani? Can she get benefit from Maiser Ani? Tush the Gemara. So Rabbi Yosef lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. Ha Rabbi Eliezer, ha Rabbanon. Rabbi say it's machlokes. It's machlokes. So whereas everyone is taking it for granted, not taking it for granted, everyone is agreeing that Allah Chalamayis, when she makes this neder, not to benefit from any other person, she can get leket shicha and peah. Her ability to benefit from Maiser. Also remember again, Maiser Ani is the sister tithe to Maiser Sheni. Right? Remember again, certain tithes rotate on the 6 year. I'm calling it 6 year agricultural cycle because remember again, in year number 7, there are no tithes, right? Because everything is hefker anyway. So in the 6 year rotation, there are certain years in which Maiser Sheni applies. The years in which Maiser Sheni, remember again, Maiser Sheni is yours. You just have to what? Eat it in Yerushalayim. So on the years in which there is no Maiser Sheni, there's Maiser Ani. So now again, I will say, so machlokes, can a woman who made this type of neder benefit from Maiser Ani or not? Here we go. I will say this is fascinating. So the Gemara says, oh good, this nan. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ein Adam Tzarech Likros Shem Al Maiser Ani Shel Demai. So I will say, this is actually very interesting. Okay, let's take a step back. Demai. Right, what's Demai? Produce from an Ama Aretz. What's the concern with produce from an Ama Aretz? Was it good? Excellent. Was it tithe or not? Right? Was it tithe or not? So comes along Rabbi Eliezer and says, listen to this. When it comes to Maiser Ani of Demai, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to designate it. Now, before you turn the page, take a look at the last Ran on the page. The Ran says, Ein Adam Tzarech Litrom Shumas Maiser. Sorry, Likros Shem Al Maiser Ani Shel Demai. Halokech Me Ama Aretz. When a person purchases produce from an Ama Aretz, La'aser v'litrom trumas meiser. Shabbos, we're going to see that when a person goes ahead and buys produce from an amaras, he has to take out trumas meiser. And I both say, what's trumas meiser? Remember again, just if we go through the tithes, there's truma that goes to a kohen. There's meiser rishon that goes to a Levi. A Levi is then obligated to separate out trumas meiser that the Levi gives to the kohen. So now, if I have demai, I have no idea what's been separated from this, right? That's the concern over here. I just want to point out, demai is suffix. Demai is suffix. Demai doesn't mean that we know for sure the Am Haaretz did not tithe. Remember again, even what does the word demai mean? Demai. What is this? So it's a suffix. Did the Am Haaretz tithe? Didn't he tithe? So now, look what the Ran says. When a person purchases demai, so the first thing he has to do is he has to separate out Trumas Meiser. What does he do with the Trumas Meiser? V'nosna l'kohen, right? He gives it to a kohen. Now we'll say, now here's what's fascinating. You've skipped a couple of steps over here, right? So we're separating out Trumas Meiser. Well, one second. What is Trumas Meiser separated from, or what is it separated on? Meiser Rishon. So what about the Meiser Rishon? Now watch this. He says, Meiser Rishon gufei. Now we'll say, now Amud Beis, the Ran. Meiser Rishon gufei, ma'akol biatzmo achar shef rishon. Yeah, now you have to separate out Meiser Rishon as well. But what do you do it? What do you do with it? You can hold on to it. You can hold on to it. After you separate, you can hold on to it. Shaharei mutar l'zarim. Now we'll say, watch this. Meiser Rishon technically can be consumed by non-Kohanim. It can be consumed by non-Kohanim. Okay, so now this is absolutely incredible. So we're going to see actually that we assume that an Am Haaretz separates out truma, right? Truma. Well, actually, we'll discuss that point. So now watch this. So now I purchased demai. So what do I do now? So the first order of business is I separate out Meiser Rishon. Let's go to the Bavar. I separate out Meiser Rishon. I will say, right from the Meiser Rishon, what do? I separate out Trumas Meiser. What do I do with the Trumas Meiser? Give that to the Kohen. I give the Trumas Meiser to the Kohen. What do I do with Meiser Rishon? Do Meiser Rishon? I keep it. What can I do with it? I can eat it. Right? Why? Meiser Rishon is mutter to non-Kohanim. Now I will say, but one second. Doesn't Meiser Rishon belong to the Levi? This is actually quite interesting. What happens with Meiser Rishon of the Levi? So now, it's on the Levi to prove that I owe it to him. What I will say? Amotzi mechavero alav haraya. Levi knocks on my door and says, hey, I heard that you went ahead and you bought produce from an Am Haaretz. Give my Meiser Rishon. What do I say to the Levi? No problem. Prove to me that the Am Haaretz did not tithe the produce. If you prove it to me, I'm happily going to give you the Meiser Rishon. Until then, I'm keeping it for myself. And the Yisrael is permitted to eat Meiser Rishon as well. Good. Back up to the Ran. However, about Meiser Ani, in Sarach Lahafrish, but again, Meiser Ani, you don't have to do anything with. Why not? This really Rabbi Eliezer, that afilu vadesh lefrisho min akri eno tovel, she ochlo b'misa, hilchach eno mafrisho misafek. So listen to this. Meiser Ani, once again, see, I will say the whole chap of Meiser Ani is the failure to separate out Meiser Ani does not make your produce tevel. Furthermore, again, there's no death penalty with the consumption of Meiser Ani. Therefore, Rabbi Eliezer says, halacha l'maisa, you don't have to separate it out from demai. You don't have to separate it out from demai. That's his halacha. So we'll say, so again, in Rabbi Eliezer's demai model, you have to separate out Meiser Rishon, but yet you could keep it and eat it. Right? Because the burden of proof is upon the Levi. You must separate out Trumas Meiser. Why? Because Trumas Meiser, Abosai, is punishable by death if consumed by Yisrael. So you got to separate out Trumas Meiser, give it away to the Kohen, but pretty much Meiser Rishon you can keep. Furthermore, according to Rabbi Eliezer, Meiser Ani doesn't make your produce tevel, and therefore again Rabbi Eliezer says you don't even have to designate it. So we'll say, so that's Lashon Avir. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Ein adam tzarich likros shem amaiser sheni shal demai. You don't even have to designate. Meiser Ani. Sorry, you don't even have to designate the Meiser Ani of demai. Good. So now watch this. That's Rabbi Eliezer. The Chum say korah. The Chum say you have to designate it. Both say korah mean you have to designate. Take a look at the Ran again. Look at the Ran. He says, "V'chamam korah shem vadai. So I'm sorry. Vadai lo hifrisho have tevel. So let's listen to this. Now I just want to point out in Rabbi Eliezer's model, you don't even have to designate it. Koroshem means a designation. Right? Rashi points out that koroshem could even mean like saying that the produce on the northeast corner of the pile, on the north corner, is my. According to Rabbi Eliezer, you don't have to designate. According to Chacham, you have to designate. Listen to this. Vadai lo efrisho havitel. You have to designate and separate it. And if you don't, the produce is tevel. The ochel min hakri b'misa. And I will say that halacha is if you eat untithed produce, it's b'misa. Afapi shemetukan lagamrei. Bein tzarech l'takin ela lahafrish meiser ani hilchach mafrisho misafek d'sveiko tovel. So we'll say interesting machlokes. So now I have d'mai. Rabbi Eliezer says you don't even have to designate meiser ani. Chacham say you must designate and even separate out meiser ani. So what's the machlokes over here? So my love. So we'll say what's the machlokes? Here we go. My love. Leman damar sveiko tovel, according to the Chachamim who say that a safek meiser ani makes the produce tevel kasavar islay tovas hana. They will hold that ultimately again there is a tovas hana. Now I will say, now take a look at the rush for just a moment over here. Take a look at the rush. Left hand column. So the rush says over here, he says kasavar sveiko eno tovel eno oser mishum tevel. So we'll say, listen to this. So the opinion that says, man damar sveiko tovel. I'm sorry, it's actually changed to. One second. Right, sveiko eno tovel. I'm sorry, the back changes this. So the opinion that holds sveiko eno tovel. So we'll say that's going to be Rabbi Eliezer. The opinion that holds that ultimately safek meiser ani does not make the produce into tevel. Now look at the rush. Eino osim mishum tevel, v'hu adin nami vada eino tovel. Tiava vada tovel hu adin sveiko. So fine. V'haidinak et sveiko mishum tebidmai ari v'chosha sveiko eino tovel. Aimot. So we'll say skip all of it. The rush is just pointing out over here that it's using a lashon of sveiko eino tovel, but it also applies ultimately to vada. But we're going to leave that on the side. We're talking about tevel right now, so everything is safek. So watch this. So he says, why is this? V'chosha sveiko eino tovel. Ein bo tovas hana lebailim, v'chevan de yachol le'echol hatevel below afrashas meiser ani havi ki'ilu lo ksiv b'huven asata. So I'll say, listen to this. The opinion that holds, get ready for this. The opinion that holds that the failure to separate out meiser ani from d'mai does not make the d'mai tevel. He holds why? Why is that? He holds that halacha l'meisa. There's no tovas hana. Now I will say, just understand okay, take a step back. We're merging two things over here, right? I will say, what's our topic? Our topic is neder. What's the neder? The Rachel made in the Mishnah, what was the neder? Right? I'm not going to get any hana from people, from brios, okay? What did the Mishnah say? She could eat leket, shechecha, and peah. What's bothering the Gemara? What's omitted? Meiser ani. So, interesting, and there's a brisa that says she can't eat meiser ani. So, our Mishnah seems to indicate she can't eat meiser ani. The brisa says she can eat meiser ani. To which the Gemara says it's a machlokes. Who's in a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon? The Rabbanon say, but what are Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon arguing on? They're not arguing on Nedarim. What are they arguing on? D'mai. So we'll say, now watch this. Watch how we're going to pull this together. So we'll say, Rabbi Eliezer, what's machlokes on the Rabbanon? Person purchases d'mai. What's their machlokes? Do you have to designate meiser ani or not? Rabbi Eliezer says, you do not have to. You don't have to. Chachamim say, you do have to. Watch this. According to Rabbi Eliezer, holds you do have to. So what does it mean you have to? And you're going to have to give meiser ani. Which means that what Rabbi say? Meiser ani possesses tovas hana. Since you have to designate it and ultimately give it, you have, right? Meiser ani has tovas. We'll say, what's tovas hana? Tovas hana means that even when you have to give a tithe away, there is a certain hana that you have in what? In what? You can choose who to give it to. That is a quantifiable hana. Get ready for this. According to Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that halacha l'maisa, there's no obligation to separate and therefore give Meiser Ani. Therefore, the act of the woman taking Meiser Ani from another person does not constitute an act of Hana. Therefore, she would be permitted to go out and take it. That's the view reflected in the Brisa. According to the Chachamim, who say that you are obligated to separate out Meiser Ani from Demai. Therefore, what will say? If you have somebody, you have to give it. Therefore, what? There's Tovas Hana. If there's Tovas Hana, we'll say then what? That's a form of Hana. That means if the woman makes a neder not to get Hana from Brios, she also can't take what? She also can't take Meiser Ani. Absolutely incredible. So let me say that once more, just to bring this together. Remember, what we're trying to figure out is Rachel, in our case, made a neder not to get Hana from people. So the Mishnah said, no problem. She can take Leket, Shechicha, and Peah. They both say, why can't she, right? So let's play this out. Rachel's married to Ruvain. Now Rachel can't get Hana from anyone. She made the neder. She goes to Shimon's field. She wants to take Leket, Shechicha, and Peah. How can she take Leket, Shechicha, and Peah? Isn't that Hana from Shimon? What's the answer? It's not. It's from Hefker. Okay. Now we'll say, what about Meiser Ani? Oh, so is Meiser Ani? So now we'll say, she wants to go to Shimon's field and take Shimon's Meiser Ani. Can she do that? To which the Gemara says, it depends. It's a machlokes. See, I will say, according to the Rabbanon, who say that Shimon is right, Shimon even from his demai produce is obligated to separate out Meiser Ani. Since Shimon is obligated to separate it out, he also has what? The power to decide who to give it to. That's called Tovas Hana. That would mean that if Rachel were to show up in Shimon's field and take his Meiser Ani, she would be getting Hana from Shimon, the Tovas Hana. Therefore, it's going to be Aser. That's B'Shecham. According to Rabbi Eliezer, where halacha l'maisa again, there is no obligation to separate out Meiser Ani. Therefore, when Rachel goes out and shows up in Shimon's field, and what takes his Meiser Ani, is she getting any Hana from him? Absolutely not. Why? Because there was no obligation to do so to begin with. Therefore, there's no Tovas Hana. Therefore, there's no Hana. Therefore, there's no violation of the neder. Absolutely incredible. So let's read that inside. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Leman da, absolutely incredible. Leman da Amar, so according to the Bach, just to read this according to the Bach, Leman da Amar Sveika Ino Tovel, so the one who holds that ultimately, again, Safek Meiser Ani in Demai does not create a Tavel situation. Listen to this. So Islay Tovas Hana, I should say it's really, the Bach changes it, less late Tovas Hana, right? Remember again, if there's no obligation to designate Meiser Ani, then there will be no Tovas Hana. So v'chevan the less late Tovas Hana lo mahanya. She's not getting any benefit when she takes the Meiser Ani. Uluman da'amar eino koreshen, but according to the opinion that says there is no obligation of designation. Kasav sveika ino tovel, v'choshe sveika ino tovel, less late Tovas Hana v'shari leiles hanuye. So both say it's absolutely incredible. So the Gemara wants, isn't this fascinating? So the Gemara wants to suggest the machlokes between the Mishnah and the Tosefta, right? Our Mishnah indicating that she can't take Meiser Ani. The Tosefta indicating that she can take Meiser Ani is in fact the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon about whether or not there's an obligation to designate Meiser Ani in Demai. Absolutely incredible. Amar le Abai says no. Abai says no. D'choli alma sveiko tovel. It's not really true. Actually, everyone agrees that when it comes to Demai, failure to separate out Meiser Ani will make the produce tevel. So what's happening over here? For Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbana b'hakim efigi. So also, what's the machlokes in the Rabbana? What's their machlokes? Here's the machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer Savar, listen to this. It's fascinating. Lo nechshedu ami aretz al Meiser Ani. This is incredible. What I'm saying. Do you know why Rabbi Eliezer holds that you're not obligated to separate out Meiser Ani from Demai? Do you know why? Because Rabbi Eliezer holds they do it. Ami ha'aretz separate out Meiser Ani. Why do Ami ha'aretz separate out Meiser Ani? Listen to this. It's great. Kevan de'ilu mifkad nechase v'havi ani v'shakelehu lesle psida. So say this is great. There is a fantastic loophole when it comes to Meiser Ani. When I say fantastic, I mean like mind-blowing loophole. Not a good loophole, but a loophole nevertheless. So let's listen to this. Anyone could do this. Anyone. This is an exploitable legal loophole, although highly inappropriate. Legal but inappropriate. Listen to this. Let's say I have produce, I separate out Meiser Ani. The moment I separate out Meiser Ani, what do I do? I make all of my property hefker. Well, then the moment that you make all of your property hefker, I will say, guess what? Who suddenly becomes entitled to Meiser Ani? Moi. right? I become entitled to Meiser Ani, because now I have no property. Well, now that I have no property, I am legally an Ani, which means that now I have the ability to acquire Meiser Ani. So, you hear this? This is a legally exploitable loophole that, again, is legal but highly inappropriate. So Eliezer says, of course Aniyim separate out Meiser Ani. And of course Amia Aretz separate out Meiser Ani. And what does the Amma Aretz do right after he separates out Meiser Ani? What does he do? He makes his property hefker and reacquires it. By the way, not such an Amma Aretz after all, right? These Amarantim know what they're doing, right? Let's say, it's always great. People always know, some important piece of information, right? It's that one nugget. They know nothing else, right? But they know that one nugget that benefits them incredibly. So therefore, what Eliezer says, Ami Aretz do separate out Meiser Ani because they have absolutely nothing to lose, because there's a way to separate it and then to very quickly reacquire it afterwards. Rabbanan hold, so nechase lo mifkid inshi. So Rabbanan hold, no, people don't do that. Nechase lo mifkid inshi. People are not going to make their property hefker. Why? The Mir says, Dilma zachi b'hu inshi achrina hilchach nechshedu. So I will say, this is actually incredible. The Rabbanan say, that's a real roll of the dice. Right? Because if you go ahead and you make your entire property, your entire estate hefker, and someone is in earshot, because I will say, hefker does require a verbal articulation. You can't just think hefker, you have to articulate hefker. If you do this, and someone hears you doing it, that's a real roll of the dice. Seif Rabbo said that's what's happening over here. So Abaye wants to say, everyone agrees that you have to separate out Meiser Ani from Dimai, and failure to do so makes the Dimai tevel. So let's not look at Rabbanon. Do Ami Haaretz separate out Meiser Ani? Rabbi Eliezer says absolutely yes, and not because Ami Haaretz are pious, but because there is a very easy way to separate and then reacquire your own Meiser Ani through this exploitable legal loophole. Whereas Rabbanon will say no, and Amaris is not going to do that because that is too dangerous to make your entire property, make your entire estate hefker. You run the risk of losing everything if someone else hears what you're doing. And therefore, again, the Rabbanon will hold that Amiyah Aretz do not separate out Meiser Ani. Fine. Rava Omer Kan b'Meiser Ani is very interesting actually over here. Kan b'Meiser Ani mischalik b'soch habayis t'chsiva bein nesina then asata lelevi lager mishum haki aser. So let's listen to this. Let me tell you this outside first. Rava holds, and it's actually quite interesting. Rava holds that there are two different types of Meiser Ani, which is actually fascinating. There's Meiser Ani that was distributed in a person from a person's home, and there's Meiser Ani that was distributed in the granary. We're going to say, what's the difference between the two? Meiser Ani distributed in the owner's home. The owner's home was dafka given to specific people, as opposed to Meiser Ani, which was distributed in the granary, was often what? Left in the granary, and whoever is poor, just come and take it. So watch this. Listen to this analogy. And said, Rava Omer, Kama Meiser Ani mischalik b'soch habayis. One case is talking about Shabbos. So again, remember, all we're trying to do over here is reconcile the Mishnah and the Brisa. The Mishnah, they're both talking about the same case of Rachel, who took a neder not to get any hana from people. So the Mishnah says she can't take Meiser Ani. The Tosefta says she can take Meiser Ani. So Rava wants us to reconcile. It's not a problem. Kan b'Meiser mischalik b'soch habayis. The Mishnah that says she cannot take Meiser from Meiser Ani. That's from Meiser Ani. That Meiser Ani dispensed from the produce owner's home. D'chsiva bei nesina. Because Rava say that is viewed as an act of giving. An act of giving meaning what? An act of hana. Act of hana. That's a targeted act of giving from the owner to the ani. And I will say because there's nesina menasat levi lager mishum haki asar lis hanuye. I will say that's called hana. That's called the targeted hana. In other words, so if Rachel were to show up at Shimon's home and get Meiser Ani, that's Shimon, that's the Tovas Hana. That's Shimon in a targeted way giving to Rachel. Rachel made a neder not to benefit from anyone. That's going to be a violation of the neder. As opposed to, and that's the Mishnah. That's why the Mishnah omits Meiser Ani from the list of things she's entitled to, because the Mishnah is talking about Meiser Ani dispensed from the home of the produce owner. she's going to get that directly from the produce owner. That's the Tavas Hana. That's an act of Nesina. That would be a violation of the Neder. Masha'en came the Tosefta, Kan b'Maisrani Meschalik B'soch Hagronos. The Tosefta that says she can take Maisrani. They will say, what type of Maisrani is that talking about? That's Maisrani that is distributed from the granary. They will say, how would you distribute Maisrani from the granary? You just make a pile of it, and ultimately, whoever wants to take, Kol Tichvin Yesir Yechol. Right, whichever poor person wants to take, come and take. In that case, Kevan Dichsib, listen to this. V'hinachta b'sha'aracha. See, I will say, what happens in the granary? See, in the granary, the Meiser Ani is more like what? Leket, Shechacha, and Peah. It's just sitting there. So effectively, it becomes hefker for the Aniyim. Therefore, again, when Rachel comes and takes that, that's not called hana'ah from any particular person, and therefore it's not problematic. So, v'anachta b'sharecha, so given the sibbe v'anachta b'sharecha, Shirley Elbaum Family. There's absolutely no problem, ultimately, again, with getting hana'ah, or there is no hana'ah in that particular situation. I will say, I'll point out over here, interestingly enough, the Ran points out, he says that this was often done in different seasons. During the summertime, often Maisrani was left in the granary. During the rainy season, the owner would bring it into the home so that the produce would not rot. So just interesting. So different seasons, Maisrani was given in different times. But Allah Kamai said this is the reconciliation, or different places. This is the reconciliation between Mishnah and the Braisa. Mishnah talking about a situation where the Maisrani is being given from the home of the owner. That's more direct, that's Hana'ah. Tosefta, which says that Meiser Ani is permitted to this woman, ultimately is when it's from the granary. That's more like Leket Shich and Peah, where she's receiving it from Hefker. I will say, Shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Wonderful day. Shkoyach.